So welcome everyone. This is February 20th, Wednesday. We're talking about line, we're talking about repetition, and we're talking about how to move the viewer's eye through the painting. And today we're going to talk about kind of different speeds. And I'm going to show you examples from some artists, and I'm going to take some of the work that you guys have put on the Facebook page. Let me say again, this is the Facebook gush coming. It's so inspiring to me to give that prompt and then see the various interpretations that you guys come up with. And I hope that if you're just watching this on YouTube and you're not in our Facebook group, I think you should be in there because Facebook's tough to deal with in a lot of ways, but it's such an effective way to kind of converse about these. Oh, Sonia, I usually put the prompt it's mounted to the top. It's the first thing on the Facebook page. So you should be able to get it from there. If you're still having trouble, let me know. But so the Facebook gush, you guys are just it's so inspiring to see what you're working on. And I think it's fun because you don't necessarily have to be painting something. You can be looking for something or something you've already done. Kurt put up a great little set of boats. So keep that up. Let's keep that Facebook page running. Keep putting things up there. I love seeing it. I love contributing to it. I love dropping in and commenting. And then today we're going to have some other stuff as well. So here's what I'm talking about when I say obstructing the viewer's path. I'll give you a real simple, and we're doing this thing again where I can't open anything. I'm going to give you a really simple explanation here. And so here I am for those of you who are curious about Procreate. I'm in the brush mode. I'm just drawing with my Apple Pencil. I don't have any pressure things set or anything like that. Think about this fundamental line. It's kind of like, it could be a road, it could be a river, it could be an abstract object, but you can see that there's movement across this line. And for me, at least, this movement goes like that. I read this partly because it's diminishing together. I read that as a movement in that direction. So if I put something in the way of that, I'm slowing the viewer's eye. Each one of these that I put in, here I slow the viewer's eye. Here I'm slowing the viewer's eye as well. Here I'm slowing the viewer's eye. Now here's a funny thing that starts to happen. You guys who are posting the trees, the multiple trees, at a certain point, that pattern stops slowing us down because of the amount of repetition. Now, because of all that, sorry, I've had a lot of coffee. The lines aren't perfectly straight. But now you can see that with the pattern in there, because it's a pattern, it's not really slowing me down anymore because I can kind of digest it all simultaneously. I'm going to do that one more time because it's important. I'm going to show you guys some examples of this in action. If I stick that one there, that's slowing the viewer's eye immediately because I'm kind of coming in from the left. If I put it there, it's stopping the viewer from continuing along that line, at least to some degree. If I put them both here, now I'm really slowing the eye. But again, at a certain point, now I feel like the eye is moving pretty slowly. As soon as I get a pattern going, now I don't feel like I need to stop. And actually, this would be what we talked about last week, the idea of expectation or of predictability, that as soon as that pattern starts to emerge, I don't feel like I have to pay as much attention to it because it's now very predictable. If you wanted to, Scott, you can just unmute yourself if you have any insights on this stuff, but you don't have to. It's I'm kind of planning on flying solo either way. So let's look at a few paintings. I think that idea makes sense. I can see you all nodding. Yes, that idea makes sense. I'm going to call this obscuring the path. I'm helping to slow the viewer down by unobscuring. When I take away the obstruction, that speeds the viewer up. Let's look at some examples of when this works and when it doesn't. Just like my equipment, when it works and when it doesn't. So I'm just gonna. I have to go. Let's just do it. I can't really see what I'm opening, so give me a second. I'm gonna pause the recording. So sorry for that little pause, everybody in YouTube land. The artist that uses this technique as a kind of, this is sort of his aesthetic, is Winslow Homer. Winslow Homer for me is a very sort of line interrupted sort of composer. So in a lot of his paintings, you'll see here in a minute, a lot of his paintings have this sort of clear, long line. And in this case, it's the stuff up here moving across the picture. There's a clear line, and then there's something somewhere on that line that's bisecting and that's interrupting that motion or that transition. And it's a really great compositional device because there's like a music to it. There's a part A and a part B. One of them is movement and one of them is stoppage. And to have those things together is really effective. So let's do a quick annotation of a couple of these. So here for me, obviously this segment up here, how that thing moves, that's kind of what the painting is about, right? That there's this sense of sort of suspension in that line. And then he also has, he's very good with how he interacts the horizon line to like what the boat is doing there. And then notice the figure is coming straight up and down. And so for me, the primary line is kind of this activity. And then the way he's obstructing it is through these pieces right there. And even he's doing something very subtle with that tree as well, that he's, if we don't have that tree, those of you who want a little iPad lesson, I'm touching the screen and holding my finger and it's loading the brush with the color right there. I want to color over the top of that tree and see what it would look like. Without it, notice how your eye moves. Notice the speed. Now your eye can move off that page pretty fast. And so he kind of has to have, so now I'm tapping the screen with 2 fingers. This, I can tell already, this is probably going to go, I don't want to have to explain the iPad while I'm doing it. We'll have a separate iPad lesson. Tapping the screen like this, so I can see, this is one of the great things the iPad does, is I can see the difference between, version A and version B. And so here, he puts this obstruction in the line of the viewer's path just to slow down a bit. Now let's also imagine that this tree is actually like big and chunky. Yes, I know that's not a very good drawing of a tree. Now that changes it too. That really slows the viewer's eye down. That's like a roadblock. When it's like this, you can kind of permeate past or permeate through. When it's like this, he's just stopping you in your tracks. There's no, you get to that spot and you stop. And so as we go forward talking about these things in the next couple weeks, I'm going to start integrating shape repetition and edge, line as an edge and things like that. Keep this fundamental principle in mind. Oh, in some ways, yes, there is. Thank you, Mona. There's also a tree here doing kind of the same job, stopping you just before you get to the edge. So he's very good at this. Look at these homers. I'll pick up a few more. So before I even say anything about it, kind of feel how your eye moves through this painting. And feel how, very clearly, especially those of you who have been in my workshop, when we talk about the coming in from the left versus coming in from the right, give yourself a minute. Look at this and think about which, let's first in the chat, if you guys are so inclined, if you come in from the left, just write the word left. If you come in from the right, write the word right. And I'll tell you my answer in 10 seconds. Yeah, we're getting a lot of rights. Here, this is great. Now we know. Interesting. This will be fun. You know what? I'm going to keep this, when this chat gets at the end of the class, you can print this out. I'm going to print this out and kind of figure out like who was who. So for me, I come in very strangely from the right. I would usually come in from the left, but I feel like there's more stuff happening. Even if I do come in on the left, I get to the right and then I want to go back. So I think you'll agree there's a lot of motion because of the direction the faces are facing. There's a sweeping right to left kind of a motion. And so let's talk about some of the other things that we've done so far these last couple of weeks. There's a repetition. This, Peggy really brilliantly pointed out, Peggy Pro Roberts, that the horizon line kind of like runs right through these guys. So we have repetition moving the eye. We have, there's a kind of a line, right? Like he's, again, I'm going to go back and say with Homer, that's the genius of Homer is same like with Andy, gosh, I'm having a tough time today, with Wyeth, Andrew Wyeth, is that his compositional approach augments his subject matter and vice versa. Like it's not just a certain design and then a certain subject matter. The subject matter then has a design. I think I said this last week. It's like the perfect soundtrack. You know, he's using the musicality of the design to make his point. And so, you know, he wants to talk about what this is like, you know, to live in America and be a boy and do these different activities. And he shows us that with this composition. You know, he could just have one boy doing it, or he could, you know, have cropped in or had anything like that. And then, you know, now he's got this kid on the ground over on the left, stopping the eye. Let's talk about the obstructions. We've got this guy's shape here. It's funny because this guy, if anything, kind of lends to the movement. He's not really an obstructor at all. Then we've got a bright white t-shirt obstruction. We've got a white shirt and a head, another face. And then notice as we're getting over here to the left, the obstructions become a little bit like smaller trees as opposed to the thicker tree. You know, he's quieting down that obstruction so that we can move through that space a little bit more easily. So, because he wants us to get to the end. You know, the final point, the punchline of this joke is that this kid wiped out. And so he wants to get us over there, and he does it at a certain pace. You know, there's a certain amount of time that it takes to digest kid 1, kid 2, kid 3, kid 4, kid 5, and then, you know, onto the ground. And so he's engaging us over the course of time in the image as opposed to just showing us like a direct, you know, here in your face, this is a boy who fell down on the ground. Let's try another one. This one's brilliant. I can't, like, this is one of the most incredible compositions related to the subject matter that I've ever seen. So notice there's a lot of empty space up here. I'm again coming in from the left. There's a lot, oh, there we go. We lost our webcam. Lucky you guys. I think maybe I just won't even worry about it. Yes, and good point. Sonia says that it's also hierarchical. Yes, I mean, this works on so many levels we could talk about it for days. But let's just talk about the compositional level first, and then I'll talk about some other parts. So we have this, all of this wide open space. Nothing's really obstructing my eye. It's interesting. You know, there's stuff happening there, but it isn't. It's not stuff I want to stop and look at. Same up here. It's very open, open, open. And so he's just forcing our eye. I hope this works. No. I'm pausing the recording for a second. All right, so hopefully I got the glitch fixed. I did. I have to be able to show you guys this because I have to do this in time. You know, there's all of this movement, and then he's just sort of spiraling us into that center area. So the first exterior area, very low obstruction. The middle area where the deer is, now we're getting some obstruction, but it's nothing that's really fascinating. He's leading us through into this point right there. And he finishes it off at the eyeball. And so compositionally, you know, he's got a couple of other little spots. There's sort of this spot, and this spot. And as Sonia pointed out, it's a hierarchy. The head is clearly dominant. The tail and the hoof, you know, they're second and third, depending on which one that you're going to see. It's okay, Sonia, just the word hierarchy, this is coming into play as well. So you guys get that idea, right? There's an idea of motion along the line, the repetition that we've been working on, the things we've been doing, you guys are sharing on the Facebook page. Then there's also the element of how fast do I move from part to part? And should I slow people down? The point of this painting is that stoppage. It wouldn't have worked as well had it not been, I think, you know, having its head half in water tells the story. If it was on grass, you might think that deer was just lying there sleeping or something. So he's using that narrative of a dead deer and the composition that could even be called like the dead deer composition, combining those together and getting, you know, the impact of Homer That's how he does it. I'll show maybe one more, and then we'll get on to you guys' paintings too. No pressure, right? We'll look at one of the great American masters, and you know, everybody holds up to that. Last one. I'll give you guys a minute to kind of form your own opinion. And so the line, and I want you guys to go, part of the homework is going to be go look through a bunch of Winslow Homer paintings with the idea in mind, how is he using linear composition, you know, how is he putting a line in a composition? And so he's trying to tell the story of a girl lying down, and so he elongates the canvas. That accentuates the line, or the, you know, the horizontalness of it. And then he puts her in a very kind of geometric pose. And the only obstructions he really allows are this and this. And he wants your eye to kind of be in the obstruction zone. Notice what I said earlier about predictability and repetition, and then variation and repetition. Zoom, like focusing just on this. He even has variation within these things that's doing a compositional job. He's moving us through the piece. He wants to get us, I think that's the place he wants us to stop a little bit, but he doesn't want us to stay there. Let's get rid of that guy. You know, if that's gone, I know I'm being a little bit nitpicky, but there's something awkward about it ending like that. You know, it's abrupt. You go from button to button to button, and then smack is that last tough, rough button. And then if I go like that, that gives me just enough. Notice that button is just a little bit lighter and a little bit less contrast. So you can really, if you want to think about this and dig around, get yourself, if you're on your iPad, this is how I like to do it. Get these pictures up on an iPad and change stuff around and see how it changes the composition. And just like really look, really pay attention to what the artist is doing in terms of where the primary line through the piece is. Every Winslow Homer has a very clear primary line of vision. And then just look, how is he then putting in the obscuring, you know, the things that are parallel and the things that are darker, the things that are sharper and softer. And it'll really help to train your eye as you're looking at your own paintings to kind of make the same decisions, or to, you know, try to be able to make decisions looking at your own work. I don't think about any of this before I start a painting. I just paint, and then I ask myself, where's the eye moving? Do I need to slow this down? Do I need to speed that up? And sorry, my voice is just about to go. But anyway, let's look at a few of yours. Nancy, I'm gonna start with yours. So those of you who are contributors, regular contributors to the Facebook page, here's how I kind of want to do this. I'm gonna give priority. One is gonna be that you painted it. Two is going to be that it is relevant to the rest of the class. Three is gonna be the early bird gets the worm. Last year I did it where I start with the last people, and I could never get back to the first people, and everybody just waited till the end and posted it. So it's gonna be, you know, the sooner you get it up there, and that it's original or that's new. I won't be able to tell if you just painted it, but if you did just paint it, say I just painted this for the class, and that'll move all those things will move up toward the top, because it's not a critique. This is a conversation on the topic that we're in. So Nancy, good old Nancy, who's also in Scott's class, Scott, by the way, you have a lot of choices that you can make in this painting. A lot of different approaches. I'm going to read it first, and then I'm going to tell you some suggestions for things that I would do if it were my painting. The first thought I have is I'm coming in from the left, and I feel a little blockage. You know, I feel like there's a little roadblock here with these windows. You know, I kind of want to get through the picture a little bit faster, and I watch if go ahead, Scott. Oh, he accidentally unmute. No, you're unmuted, Scott, if you want to talk.
Oh, I was just listening at this point. Sorry.
Okay, great, no problem. You know, so your eye my eye stops at these. When I want to, because you're giving me repetition, I want to go down this line, and I don't want to get stopped. right there. So some options you have, what I would say is paint out or obscure. I'm sorry, obscure is the wrong word because that's how we're using it with the other side. If I diminish the significance of that piece, or probably I should have done this one instead. The left window I'm just sort of diminishing its importance. Now you see already there's a little bit more of a flow to this. Like when those two windows are next to each other, my eye feels like I'm supposed to be looking at that. When I take it away, now I feel like there's kind of a flow, and now I'm looking for other repetitions. Once I see the single window, now I'm asking, like, where's another window? Where's another window? Well, I get it down at the end. I sort of think you need some windows inside those other houses. So like here, now that's starting to feel a whole lot better. But now there's a little bit of a separate tension to me. There's sort of an attention here and an attention here, and I have to make the decision, which of those do I want to make most important? Right now, this feels like it's got to be the most important because it's kind of the most interesting shape, and it's pretty close to the center. There's some discomfort there. I think something over here has to jump up in interest and in value. So I'm just going to put like some little dark things in the window. And now that feels like that rhythm to me feels pretty good. I think I'm going to lighten the window inside the middle house. Yeah, and so now that rhythm's starting to kind of, it feels a little bit more fluid, and it feels like it's stopping and obscuring me where I want it to. So this is all I'm going to do today, just a few of these, just to get the point across. And if you guys ask me to, I'll post a before and after on our Facebook page, and then you can kind of see what I'm getting at. Let's do, Dana had a really great one too. And Dana's question, this actually plays into both last week and this week. Dana's question on the Facebook page was, what kind of rhythm or what kind of regularity or repetition is positive and what's negative? I would say, if you don't mind, Dana, because now we know each other pretty well, I would say that the top half of this painting, the variation and predictability balance feels really good to me. The bottom half of the painting feels like the predictability balance is over, it's becoming a little too predictable. And here's why. There's a repetition. It's not quite as repetitive there, but you're sort of, I know that the highlight, that's probably how it looked, but there's something about, putting that highlight, you're dialing up the predictable repetition. And so now you're also, there's something happening here, here, and here, also dialing up that predictability. So my suggestion would be lose some of this, like drag your paint. I'm going to grab a little chunk of that color. I'm getting the lavender just to the right of the left side. You can kind of see me drawing on top of it right there. If you obscure some of this, or if you, de-emphasize some of these parts, that's going to increase the unpredictability. That will decrease the predictability. And here's the kicker. You guys have to decide how predictable you want it to be. And if I may use Scott as an example, the way Scott's getting this is he has very predictable positioning. He has something a lot of times right in the center, and it's a recognizable object, and it's something we see all the time. And then he uses the surface. And Scott, I'd love it if you'd pop in here and say something if I'm right or if I'm wrong. He uses his surface to create lots of unpredictability. There's all sorts of variation. There's very little repetition. Each stroke has its own kind of quality and personality. And then, he's getting both of those together. So that's sort of what we're trying to get out of this lesson. Is Scott there? Are you there, Scott?
Yeah, I was just going to let you run with that and see where you went.
All right, thank you.
Well, and from my point of view, and our focuses are a little bit different in how we approach work. It's looking at a couple of these. It's the predictability that you're talking about. To me, it's when there's a similarity in treatment and similarity in tone.
Right.
I mean, like those series of houses on the beach or such, when you put in that little dark note in that small window, and so suddenly, instead of there being all these objects of sort of a similar scale, you introduced an even smaller scale and a deeper dark that then made broaden the breadth, the range of values in that piece. And that was the same thing that was happening from from my sort of worldview, as you're working on those three vases, that when you obscured that one side, suddenly you had different stems, had different value sets, different ranges of color, and that made it more interesting, because that's in many ways that's just how the world functions.
Yeah, and I think you guys, the way to apply this practically, get your painting moving, get all the parts together, get your values established in your color and positioning, and then start asking yourself, what is being repeated, what is predictable and what is unpredictable, and do those need to be adjusted? So here, Dana, you've got a pretty nice, all right, look at this. You've got these two are almost identical. And so you can ask yourself, do I want that level of predictability, or do I want it to come away? If you want it to go away, modify one of them. Scott, what was the word you just used? That there's a change in tone, or a change in something?
Yeah, change in value, that things shift. Wherever you're looking around, there's almost never do you see two things that are the exact same value, even if they're really close.
Yeah, and it's sort of tricky, because a lot of people teach, you've got to just have these three values. But the real masterful application of that is you have three groups of values that are very clearly distinct. We'll talk about that later when we're talking about shape. But anyway, so to finish up on this one, Dana, this is another thing. You've got no, yes, which is a very good pattern to have. So now let's make that final thing a little bit sharper, a little brighter. And now you've got, you've introduced that variety. I may have overdone it. You've introduced just a little bit of variety. And so you're doing what Scott does. You're creating a balanced, geometric, formal design. And within that design, there are unexpected twists and turns. So I'm going to keep moving. I know you guys are getting questions coming up, but I kind of want to hit one more idea. Kurt has this one. This is the most obvious way to teach this lesson. And I need my green screen. I want to be able to point at all this stuff. That'll be coming soon. For me, for everyone, we all have the same path. That's why road paintings are cool. Let's say I wanted to slow this path down. These are usually my tools of choice to slow down a road. If I start putting up fancy stuff, and now again, back to that idea of repeating pattern and predictability. If I put one thing like that right in the path, that's a big obstruction. I've put another one like that. Now I'm not only obstructing, I'm kind of keeping your eye in a place I don't want it. But if I put a path, a series of very similar, I'm going to try to do them exactly the same. Let me see how it looks. You have this series of almost exactly the same. It's not that, there's a different pacing to that than if I put one here, one here. I can control the view, the speed of the viewer's eye with that kind of a rhythm. I can make it faster by making it more predictable. I can make it slower by introducing unpredictability, what I'm calling today the obstruction. So I think that makes sense. Let me make sure there's nothing else that I was going to get to. And Scott, if you want to give any final thoughts on that, it's always great to hear your opinion.
There's my favorite image that I usually show folks, and I'll see if I can find it. I can throw it in the Facebook group. There's a Wayne Thiebaud painting of, I think it's 4 cupcakes.
Oh yes.
And they are if you need proof that there are rules, and the rules are, they can be helpful, but if you're aware of them and you fight them, you can do whatever the hell you want.
And I think Thiebaud is the perfect artist for what we're talking about. Line, repetition, predictability. He's a master of it.
He's got these 4 cupcakes. They're spaced away from each other the same. They're centered in the composition. But where they're different is each one has got a different color feel, a different value feel.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to try maybe doing this without stepping on anyone's toes, picking sort of the one that worked the best of all of these. I think this, Karen, what a great painting. This is a gorgeous painting. And I think the reason it works is the stuff that we're talking about. The predictable parts, the repeating parts are the color, the shape of some of the trees, and then the unpredictable parts, things that we kind of have to sort our way through this. Karen, what a genius move to stop our eye, and not only stop it, pull it back in right along that shadow. And so you guys give yourself a minute to sort of walk along this line. And when you hit that, it stops you. Now watch, if I get rid of it, here's the fun of being able to use Procreate on it. I can see what it would look like without that and see if I like that better. I don't. It still works, but I don't like it better because it does. The way she's slowing the eye is by making the trees kind of a different size and there's some roughness to them. But I love the use of that. I'm much happier because now I'm also getting an unpredictable relationship. Well, now we're off the webcam again. An unpredictable relationship between the foreground and the background, and an unpredictable relationship between the shadow and the light, and all of that stuff. So there's the color harmony is the predictable side, and the rest of it is the unpredictable. I'm going to try something since we're already messed up technologically. Give me just a second. All right, so to wrap this up, the prompt for this week, and don't email me asking me about it. We'll sort it out over there in Facebook. The prompt for this week, I want a clear line and I want a clear obstruction. So let's go back to this Homer. Okay, let's even just do this one. The line is that shadow. The obstruction is when it hits the wall. And I want to see as much of a difference between those as you can muster. So for example, the Homer, this is a very clear, that's sort of a bad image, but that's a very clear use of this idea that there's, in all of the stuff that's not people, is swooping and sweeping all over the place. There's a primary line, and it's literally a rope or a chain or whatever, a wire. And then suspended on that wire is some mass, some kind of obstruction. And Carol's asking about time. It starts at 2 p.m. Central. That is correct. Anyway, this is why we need wingmen, Scott. Let other people answer all of these questions. So with that being said, going forward at some point, Scott's going to be my co-teacher in a lot of these, just because, again, trying to do the technology plus the chat room plus the demonstration and all that stuff, it's kind of a 2-guy job or a 3-person job, or 4 in some cases too. So anyway, that's the prompt. I want to see, I'll type it out and I'll give a few examples in the Facebook page. Find something or make something where a very clear line is present and a clear obstruction of that line. However you guys want to interpret that, go for it. And we'll see, this is going to be a fun week because you guys are going to come up with all sorts of different examples. You can look back at your old work, and if you have an iPad, go ahead and draw on top of it. Do some before and after posts of, I took this out, look how fast it goes. I put that back in, look how much it slows down. And again, as always, thank you guys for patience with the technology. I promise we're right around the corner to where I have all my buttons again, and I can, do the green screen. I'm much more comfortable with that. This is a bit of a challenge to do by myself. I've got all these things scattered all over the place. So I'm going to stop the recording, and if you guys have a few questions at the end, I'll answer them. But I'll see you guys over on Facebook.